Welcome back, everybody, from that short break. Sorry the break was short. We wanted to make sure that we can get this next session started. Celeste Carter, Dr. Celeste Carter, is a microbiologist, PhD. She's been a professor, and then in 2009, she went to NSF. And at NSF, she runs the ATE program, which is an essential element for driving innovation in undergraduate education. Celeste, we interviewed you about 2 months ago, I believe, for the MassBridge project. And I got to say, you just completely knocked my socks off, and actually the whole team. The stories you tell, the kinds of insights you have, and I'm just delighted that you've been able to make time to share some of that with our group here. So with that, I'll step out of the way and give you the floor.
Thank you very much, George. And I'd also initially like to say thank you very much to all of the students, because you really always have amazing stories and just amazing persistence and enthusiasm for moving forward. And so I wanted to thank everybody for that. Let me see if I can share my screen. I don't have a lot of slides, but I have a few slides. Okay, let me get this in screen sharing mode. Here we go. George, thank you for the introduction. As George said, I am the lead program officer for the National Science Foundation Advanced Technological Education Program, which is in the Division of Undergraduate Education at the which is housed in the Education and Human Resources Directorate. So to get all of that out of the way. I've provided my my email address at the bottom of this, just because I always love to hear from people. I know I've heard from some of the participants today following chat and questions that are part of the ATE community. I know the next panel will have Dr. Marilyn Barger talking to you. She is the center director and PI of one of the ATE centers. So it's a real pleasure to be here and talk to you a little bit about this program. And I was thinking about the title of this convening, Bridging the Education Workforce Gap. And that's really what this ATE program has been about since it started. And it really is a result of bills that were introduced in Congress in 1992, Scientific and Advanced Technology Act, that was signed into law, that mandated the National Science Foundation to develop a program that looked at innovative strategies to educate the skilled technical workforce. And that's really the workforce that uses science and engineering skills to a great extent, but doesn't necessarily need a baccalaureate degree. So with that, this chart is hopefully showing you the pieces of the response to bridging that education workforce gap, which I really think is partnerships, strong committed partnerships. So here's a program that's looking at the skilled technical workforce with the position of skilled, or the definition of the skilled technical workforce. It places the two-year institutions in leadership roles. So community and technical colleges are in a leadership role. But Congress also said this program should be able to support grades 7 through 12, not just high schools, as well as four-year institutions. So you can see that even though in 1992, I don't believe the term career pathways was being used, this is a program that can support these pathways, and has. Another really important part is the partnerships with industry. It's absolutely critical to this program that every single project and center have committed industry partners. And in addition to that, economic development agencies, workforce investment boards, that whole sort of package comes together in this program. In fiscal year 21, in this fiscal year, which is just about wrapping up, the budget for this program was $75 million. So it's a fairly well-funded program at the National Science Foundation. It's not huge. The program was just reauthorized with bipartisan support, and the authorization for the ATE program going forward has a doubling of the budget to $150 million a year. Now that's authorization, not appropriation. So we'll see what happens with that. But this is a long-term, long-running program at the National Science Foundation that has been working on these partnerships for a long time. So I think it's really worth looking at some of what's happened with this program. We have a sort of a resource hub, which is called ATE Central. It's housed at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And on ATE Central, you can find this map of active ATE projects and centers now. What I'd like to point out is there's a lot of dots there, right? And there's a few, there's a few states that don't have quite as many. If you look at over the course of this program, all states have been represented. In addition, you can kind of see Puerto Rico down there in the far right-hand corner. We're missing Hawaii, Guam, American Samoa Community College is a new awardee this year. So this is a program that has really been picked up and looked at and responded to by two-year institutions broadly. The colors there towards the bottom give you an idea of the sort of the breadth of this program. And thinking about advanced manufacturing, yes, there's a color just for advanced manufacturing. But if you think of biotech and chemical technologies, that's part of biomanufacturing and advanced manufacturing. Micro and nanotechnologies are part of advanced manufacturing. There's almost, think about cybersecurity. Everybody wants to know how to insert cybersecurity across the entire industry area. So there's a lot of things within this program that support advanced manufacturing. This just gives you another look at active projects versus active centers. There usually are somewhere around between 350 to 400 active projects and centers at any one time. Again, this just gives you a glimpse of those same sort of categorizations. But again, think about each one of these has a function in advanced manufacturing. So this really is a program that's responsive to this area. Here's a few really just two things that I wanted to point out if you have not seen these publications. On the left, we have from the National Academies, Building America's Skilled Technical Workforce. On the right, kind of crossing paths with the National Academy study. The National Science Board, the governing board of the National Science Foundation, became interested in the skilled technical workforce. And so a special task force was convened. They traveled around the country for 2 years, going to community and technical colleges, interviewing faculty, talking to students. They came to the ATEPI conference for successive years, again, interviewing industry, students, and faculty. And this is the report that came out of that 2-year task force. So it's definitely worth looking at. This was something I thought, oh, I'm really glad I attended the National Visiting Committee because we have a special project called Preparing Technicians for the Future of Work. And that was something that was talked about earlier in the convening today. This is sort of a sneak peek at a publication that isn't quite out yet, but you can actually reach it using this this link that's at the bottom of this slide. And it's a framework for a cross-disciplinary STEM core thinking of the future of work. So it's both educator and industry recommendations for what needs to be in a 2-year technician education program around advanced digital literacy, around data knowledge and analysis, around business knowledge and processes. So you're welcome. Everybody's welcome. I actually asked everybody. I asked permission yesterday that I could leave this slide in this deck. So hopefully you will take advantage of that and check this out. And then finally, there is a new ATE solicitation out. I just wanted to point out that we are increasing the budget for some of the tracks. We have a new track on consortia for innovations in technician education. So 2 institutions with their industry partners working together could request a budget of up to 1.2 million. More than 2 could request a budget up to 3 million. And as always, this program is interested in addressing rural technician education, projects that broaden the diversity of the entry-level technical workforce, recruiting veterans. We actually have a couple of projects, actually more than that are looking at recruiting veterans. We're also looking at recruiting students with disabilities into STEM technician education programs. So we have a couple of projects within the portfolio that are looking at autistic students moving into these programs. So it's a really interesting program to look at. I wanted to talk about one very new opportunity. This is a Dear Colleague letter that was just published, and it's called the Start Dear Colleague letter. It's an opportunity to support students, faculty, and faculty-student teams from two-year institutions of higher education, working with the industry, university, cooperative resource centers, or research centers, excuse me, IUCRC, which is another program in the engineering directorate at the National Science Foundation. They are actively doing industry-driven research projects at these IUCRC sites. And there's a couple of ways that people could come into this supplement opportunity. One would be if you're an active ATE awardee, you partner with an IUCRC and the ATE award submits the supplement. The other, and this is where I think it's interesting for the larger population that's listening today, if you are close to an IUCRC site and you're interested in partnering with them, the IUCRC institution can submit the supplement and support two-year community college students and faculty in these research internships. So something I think, I'm hoping a lot of people will take a look at that and possibly think about coming in and partnering with the IUCRC sites. And they cross a lot of different areas. This brings us back to the resource hub, ATE Central. It is home to the ATE Impacts book. This is another opportunity for you to take a look at an overview of all of the ATE centers. At this point, there are 26 of them, and then a select set of projects in each of the areas covered by ATE. There's information on impacts and results. ATE Central also has a resource library. Everyone archives the materials they've developed in a project at ATE Central. So this is a good place to start, and the Impacts book is really I think a great publication. And then finally, for the ATE program, given the fact that many two-year institutions, a lot of the two-year institutions across the United States may or may not have a grant writer or even have a lot of experience coming in and requesting funding from a federal agency. So several years ago now, we started projects that supported mentoring of faculty at institutions who would like to craft a proposal for this ATE program. And this just gives you, there's several of them now. MentorLinks is one that is run through the American Association of Community Colleges. Mentor Connect, if anyone is thinking of crafting a proposal, regardless of whether it's to the National Science Foundation or not, Mentor Connect has a huge set of resources in their resource library. There's another one, Mentor Up, where Mentor Connect looks at institutions that have either never had an award from ATE or not had an award in the past 7 years. Mentor Up, that could be anyone. And then finally, Project Vision is looking at the idea that not only do you need to have a project that's faculty driven coming up, you also need to have your administration willing to support you. So Project Vision is looking at doing that type of thing, of looking at involving especially new presidents and boards of trustees, bringing them into the fold and sort of upping their awareness of this program and the opportunities available. And so let me check out, I see there's a couple of questions. Let's see, we've got how do we integrate educational practical areas, if not through conscious unified field of total knowledge? What do you think about natural and easy unifying transcendental approach to bridging the education workforce gap? Well, that could be a little tough to think about how to integrate it. I think communication is hugely important. And I think the committed partnerships that you develop are hugely important. And I think we've heard that. I also one of the things that George didn't mention was I was at a community college in California, developed a biotechnology program there, and actually led and ran that program for 15 years. So before coming to the National Science Foundation permanently. So keeping in touch with your students, supporting your students, understanding where they're coming from, but also providing them the opportunity to understand where they are as far as their curiosity, their interest in a particular field. All of those things are all built into what you work with. And you know, I was at the Manufacturing USA Institute Nimble National Conference a couple of weeks ago, and I had one of the people who has a biomanufacturing program in California came up to me and he said, Celeste, I just want you to know that you changed my thinking about these programs. He goes, because an awful lot of your students moved right into research labs at places like Stanford and Berkeley. I was in Northern California. And he said, I never thought of that. Most of my students, I had he still has a biomanufacturing program. And his students were moving into places like the monoclonal antibody facility for Genentech. So there is, and I think an open door for people who keep their curiosity alive and are persistent, as the student panelists all talked about being. And so I think that it's not an insurmountable barrier to moving students, supporting them through with their career ideas. So let's see, and there's a lot of chats. Let me see. Most of it, well, we've got one person who said our college participated in Mentor Connect and is currently participating in Mentor Links on a different project they highly recommends. That's great. That's good to hear. We've got the various links for the things I talked about. And if there are other questions that you would like to post, I'm happy to answer them. Let me stop screen sharing. And I am here. So I am happy to answer any other questions that you might have, although I think I'm doing pretty well. I think it's 3:18 and I've got until 3:20.
So there are two questions. This is George again.
Oh, okay.
There's my question and another person's questions. Let's do the other person's questions first. What are the top priorities you're seeing for NSF ATE right now?
You know, one of the things I love about this program is that it's actually driven by industry. Because if you don't have a committed industry partner and you're not responding to a workforce need, you don't have an ATE proposal. So over the course of the years, you see various things coming and going. I think one of the things that has been increasing lately are things like the autonomous technologies. One of our newer centers is the National Center on Autonomous Technologies, and this covers everything from autonomous vehicles on land, both agricultural and cars and trucks on the highways, to drones, so air, and even underwater drones. So we have the Marine Technology Education Center, MATE, is part now of this National Center on Autonomous Technologies. Another area of growing interest, obviously, I think we would all say this, would be environmental education, climate change. We have another center that was just funded at Eastern Iowa Community College in environmental education and a focus on water technologies. We have a new advanced manufacturing center as well, a national one at Tungus Community College. Dr. Karen Lucina Birch is the PI. And industry had a huge input into developing that advanced manufacturing center, covering really a broad range of sort of sub areas that all feed into advanced manufacturing. So I think that's industry drives it. I love it. I don't have to be sort of pulling out my crystal ball and thinking about what should I put in this next solicitation, because I always find that industry and educators are there ahead of me.
Well, thank you. And you actually answered the question I was going to ask, is what are some of the favorite stories you can share right now? And you've already talked about a few of those.
Sure. Well, you know, another one I love is when you think about where students come from. And I know Iraj Najad had that question about students who come in. A community college or a technical college is an open door. And I still remember one of my students who came in who had a phlebotomy certificate, so he could draw blood. He was a recent immigrant from the Philippines to the United States, and he walked through the door and said, I want to go into biotechnology. He ended up getting a job after a one-year certificate with SRI, and was placed initially in the animal care facility. He was working for vets. He identified a microorganism that was actually infecting one of the animal rooms. He speciated it, and he drew up a standard operating procedure to control the spread of that infection to any other room at the facility. The vets didn't believe him, so they sent the isolate out, and it came back with the exact information that he had identified himself. So there's a lot of stories like that. I think we all look for that. I think the student panelists always do a great job. Another thing that people could look at, we host the Community College Innovation Challenge each year in partnership with the American Association of Community Colleges now. And you can check out the winner this year was a team of students from Pasadena Community College who did a bio nano project, coming up with a prototype for addressing, specifically putting a monoclonal antibody on a silver gold nanoparticle to target breast cancer cells. So there's a lot of curiosity, a lot of persistence, a lot of really smart people at two-year institutions. We need to take advantage of them.
Fantastic. And I'm sorry, I can't turn my camera on. So I'm just a voice talking to you instead of a face. There's something, some challenge going on right here. I just want to thank you for, oh, host asked me to start my video. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So
all right.
Visible now. Great. I want to thank you for, first of all, sharing your time here with there, but I also want to thank you for what you've done here with the ATE program, right? You're saying, first of all, I've got money, I want to give it to people. But in addition to that, what you've done is you've built this entire ecosystem to help people understand how they can engage, to mentor them in the process. So you don't have to be a serial government grant winner. You're going to help them get there.
Right.
And this community share and also the community to share the ideas across among the grant winners on what they're doing. So I want to thank you for all you've done. I want to thank you for making time to be here with this group. I'm sure you're going to get a lot of emails.
I hope so. I look forward to it. Thank you.